Hey series, welcome to episode 148, part 2 of the So This My Way podcast with Dato Sri Idris Jala. I'm your host and producer, Lingya, and if you haven't already listened to part 1 with Idris Jala, stop, go back to the previous episode. Promise you won't regret it, because it gives you context into who Dato Sri Idris Jala is. We talk about his childhood, growing up in Borneo Highlands as part of the Kalabik tribe, the storytelling culture that he grew up in, and how he made his way up in the corporate world. Now on to part 2, today's episode, where we dive even deeper into his leadership philosophy, how he's continued to climb his career ladder all the way up to founding PEMANDU, as well as the methodologies that he's developed to provide big boss results. We also get personal and explore his approach to family, marriage, and advice that he gives to his own sons. So, if you've ever wondered how one of Malaysia's most inspiring leaders built his career and whether he's found his why, then stick around. You're going to enjoy this episode. And oh, by the way, before we get into this episode, I'd love to talk to you about this new course that I've built called the Build Your Why course. It's all about how people can build their own personal brand to tell their own stories, whether online and virtually. You've heard a lot about other people sharing their stories here, and maybe you feel it's time that I learn how to share my story as well to the world. If you want to find out, just check the show notes. The link is there for Build Your Why. Now, are you ready? Let's go.
If you had a chance to redo it, would you act the same way?
On hindsight now, I said I would. I certainly would. I mean, I really think that if I step back and said, yeah, I definitely would have done exactly the same thing. Maybe I would have not quarreled too much to get to where, because we had lots of harsh words that we exchanged during the negotiations before I realized that I had to give some compromises. Because they were saying that there's a law in the country that every essential services, they can use the emergency law to take over the company, remove us. The threat of them utilizing the emergency law was the one that caused me to lose my cool. I actually lost my temper. And at that moment, I stepped back and I realized I shouldn't do that. We were negotiating, but of course, people use those strong arm tactic. But those arm tactic, you get very emotional. The bird brain kick in, and I was not thinking rationally.
I mean, to be fair, there were threats made against you. Guys stalked you, knew where you were going.
Yeah. There was one guy that kept sending me some envelopes, and they put some bullets inside there. Yeah. And he said he used to work as a sharpshooter in the military, and he knew exactly where I was working, where my house was. Our HR guy was a captain in the military before. So, and then I spoke to him, Nihal, he said, these letters, he said. He was very interesting guy, he said. Great, he said. The fact that the guy sent you the letters, he's not going to shoot you. If he is sending you the letter, he's wanting to frighten the daylight of you. He's not going to shoot you. But it was comforting for him to tell me that, because he said, look, the psychology, if you want to shoot you, we will have shot you already. He just wants to frighten you so that your life is miserable. Because at the time, every day in the morning, I used to ask my driver, Ajit, to take a different route. But the guy, Nihal, said, look, boss, there's only 3 ways. If he wants to shoot you, whatever you come, one of them, he will catch you. So you don't worry about it. You just have to take the same shortest route. Don't worry about him. He's not going to shoot you. So it's very interesting. You have to take counsel from people. But nonetheless, when you go through that moment, I was taking a lot of risks, personal risks. And it was so nice one fine day, Shell gave me a new job in London. Our big boss, one of the gods, 5 gods in Shell, his name is Paul Skinner. And he offered me the job and asked me to come to London. But the first day I got to the office, he asked me to come to his office to chat with him. And the interesting thing he said is, Idris, we decided to bring you to London because in Sri Lanka, you were prepared to take so many risks, those risks that would endanger the life of yourself and your family. We thought we should take you out before you kill yourself.
Oh, no.
That was the word he used. Because I was not scared of danger. I took them as normal. Even when we invited the Minister for Investment and Trade to plant the cornerstone for our new terminal that we were building. He came there and they did the ceremony, planted the terminal, put the cornerstone there. The very next day, opened the newspaper, his head was on the front page. The Tamil Tigers blasted in, suicide bombing. And so my wife and I were looking at this and said, whoa. So we told the guard and our maid, make sure you check all the newspapers. We don't want the boys to see it. Because it's common for them during that time. It was the height of the Tamil Tigers during the period. And so it was normal for them. I mean, for me, it was quite traumatic. So after a while, I repeatedly went through this kind of thing. In my mind, they were quite normal things as well. I was devoid of the dangers.
Because you grew up Barrio Highlands.
Yeah. I was not scared of them. A very interesting part of my life.
It's so interesting that you would go from Sri Lanka to London to Bintulu.
Yeah.
It really sends you all over the place.
Yeah, sure. In many sense, it was a fantastic school of management. And they gave me all sorts of jobs. I was in HR, I was in sales, I was in marketing, I was business engineering, I was heading an LPG business, and I went for LNG and gas to liquids. I did so many different things in Sri Lanka. And Shell's exposure was fantastic because they put you through tremendous learning experience. And I think I would have never been able to learn all this in school and university.
It's one person you learned from, Michael Black.
You've done your homework. Michael Black is one of the most intelligent people I have met and worked with. He was a consultant for CSE Index. You may remember, you read, in the 80s, there was a very big management book called Re-Engineering the Corporation. It was written by Hammer and Champy. So Champy then made a huge story out from it and taught the world how to run corporation. He then formed a consultancy firm called CSE Index. Michael Black was one of the senior vice president, very senior guy. He came to do consultancy. That was when I met him. He was a very, very smart guy, highly analytical, and he was incisive in the things that he recommended for us to do. But at the end of the day, he was a consultant. The leadership must take and run with it. That period, I was exposed to the very best thinking globally. In Shell Malaysia, he was the consultant involved. I learned so much watching this guy. And I also realized what we were failing to do was to implement the sticks.
Like the lab.
Yeah, like the labs. We ran the labs, but the implementation post the lab required us to deal with resistance to change. And so when I became the CEO, that learning experience, I realized why we didn't go as far as we should have was simply because the path was made clear, but we veered away from it because of the resistance to change. So when you see the resistance to change, you must not give up. You must not take a different road and lead you somewhere else. You may detour, but you must return to the true north. You must be relentless about it. So that lesson learned is what to do and what not to do. And so when I was in Sri Lanka, I pondered a lot about that. And there was one chap, one consultant by the name of George Parsons. He used to be a consultant for Bill Clinton in the White House. He left me a book. And interesting guy, George Parsons, was also a pastor in a Christian church. He said, Idris, I'm going to give you this book. It's called The Last Word on Power, written by Tracy Goss. Colon, making a leadership reinvention to make the impossible possible. That was the subtitle of the book. He said, if you read his book, your life will never be the same again. So I read the book and I didn't even finish chapter 1. It was the most dry and boring book I've ever seen. So I abandoned the book and I discarded it. I didn't know where I left it. When Ngan and I were in Sri Lanka, then I faced this game, the impossible. I remember the book. Executive Reinvention, Last Word on Power, Executive Reinvention to make the impossible possible. So I asked Ngan where the book. We found the book and decided reading it. That book was a fundamental change in my perspective how to approach the problem. It was that book, because that book says a very important aspect of dealing with the impossible is the illustration was a samurai fighter. The reason why a samurai fighter has a much greater chance of winning a duel with a non-samurai fighter is because if in a split of a second he has a chance to kill you, he will kill you. And if you're not a samurai fighter, if you hesitate for a split of a second to kill, then you'll be killed. The reason why a samurai fighter has that edge is simply because if he loses a duel, he will disembowel himself. So winning and losing was life and death for the guy. So if he loses the duel, he will harakiri. That's why the last word on power. If you really want to do the real impossible stuff, you must put everything on the line. Everything is on the line. And so if you put everything on the line, the chances of you winning is stacked as high as you can imagine. That's why it's the last word on power. But not all of us are prepared to put everything and stack them on a basket. But you want to hedge certain things, you want to mitigate some risks. That's why we never really achieve our full potential. But of course, that book was a very fundamental book in transformation of my paradigm. Because leadership is about changing the paradigm. If your paradigm is an old paradigm, you'll never make a huge leap of faith to conquer the impossible and your fear of failure.
I noticed that you mentioned Tracy Goss in pretty much every single interview.
Yeah.
So I didn't read the book, but I found the animated version.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of this idea of impossible goals that you always talk about. And at the same time, you have also said once in an interview that one of your weaknesses is that you're very slow to recognize that you've made a mistake and to also change as well.
Yeah.
Isn't there a fine line between making and reaching for an impossible goal and it really being just foolhardy, really?
Yeah. You will go through that, because when you are chasing for the impossibility, it is very difficult for you to realize that the thing that you're doing is actually wrong. You have a technical solution that is actually wrong.
Yeah.
Because you realize you have to persist at doing it. And that's not easy to do. And the only time you will really get to know this, if you chase again the impossible, is to get counseling from other people.
Yeah.
Other people that come with very different ideas. And that's why you have to have a team of people on the side that must be prepared to give you a very different perspective. And if you don't listen to it, you don't get that.
Yeah. I imagine one of those people is your wife.
Yeah, my wife's one of them. Unfortunately, she's not in the work. But she is brutally honest to me about many things. So it's fantastic. But we have many people like that. I have one guy, his name is John To. He worked with me. He's a very young chap. When I worked in London, I saw him walking around and I kind of thought he was Malaysian. And so I bumped into him on the corridor and we spoke. And then I realized he was a Malaysian. He was a young student hired by Shell in London, working there. Then I left Shell, London. I came back to Malaysia. Who did I see on my first day? John To. He was a young graduate, and I kind of took him into my tutelage, and I worked with him and really groomed him. And so in many sense, we form a kind of relationship that is, I won't say it's father and son, like a mentor and protege, but this protege can tell me things because we became friends. He has a way of telling me things that I don't really like to hear, but he has a way of doing it. So it was very good. So when he resigned from Shell and DS, because his father has a company in Kuantan, and this guy is very, very smart fellow. So he said, look, I want to go to Kuantan to do the family business. I said, look, why didn't you tell your dad, actually, right now I'm going to bus. Oh, please come and join me. I got a new job. I'm going to Malaysia. I'm going to leave Shell. So he left. He told his father, I'm going to take an intermission. I'm going to join Idris. We're going to do that. So it was a huge adventure. So when I turned out in Malaysia Airlines, it was me and John To.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. It was a real game, the impossible. A very smart guy, highly analytical. He brought in certain things that I didn't have. He was very, very honest with me about things. When it's wrong, he comes and tells me.
So what's the best way to tell you things you don't like to hear?
The best way to bring data, bring evidence and show me the data that the thing is really not working. Don't just give me views and thoughts, opinion, because I don't normally sway to views and opinion because I can argue with you my own opinion. But if you bring me facts and figures, data to prove the point, I will then post anything. Because John is a highly analytical guy. He did engineering in Oxford. So he brought data and proved to me that, boss, if you pursue this path, it's quite clear this is going to lead to self-destruct. And he uses kinds of words as well. He's a fascinating man.
You had a choice between being chairman of Shell and mom.
Yeah.
Why not chairman?
Yeah. That was a job I wanted to do, really, actually. You asked a fundamental question. At that time, they appointed me to become the chairman of Shell Malaysia. By that time, if I chose them, I would have been the youngest guy at that time.
Yeah. Paid well.
Yeah, paid well. But the reason is this. I reached a point in my life. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could go out there and do the thing and turn around a company that's nothing to do with oil and gas. Because for 23 years, I was just doing oil and gas. So I kind of thought that maybe I was successful because of familiar territory. So by that time, I've already read this idea of the game, the impossible, and that game being possible is not just restricted to one discipline, no one sector. It can cut across other sectors. But I was curious. And so I really wanted to test myself whether that was possible or not. That was it. It was a huge adventure to take a huge leap of faith. The interesting thing was when Ngan and I had a chat about this, and I got my boys, we have 2 sons, and we asked them to vote. Which should I take? The majority vote was I should stay in Shell.
Yeah.
The most rational thing to do. But Ngan already knew I was going to choose the other path. But despite that, then we spoke about it. He said, it's okay. If you fail, it's okay. We have the house in Barrio. I mean, the worst come to do was that. But I've always had the rule in my life. Little part in my career, I didn't want to make any mortgages. So by that time, I had debt free. I had no mortgage. I paid for our house, paid for the car. So Ngan and I said, we're free. We don't owe anybody any money. So if nothing else, we go to Barrio and stay in the family house. So I wasn't afraid to fail.
Yeah. But you're going into the fire again. You're coming from MNC, GLC.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very different. And that was the challenge because, you're right in raising that because every leap of faith that you go through the unknown, the biggest thing that stands in the way is fear of failure. Because unknown is colossal fear of failure because it's unknown. And if you know it, you've been there before, you can rely on precedent. But if you go into an unknown area, the colossal thing that occupies your mind is fear of failure. And so if you don't conquer the fear of failure, you'll never step in. That's the whole point about Tracy Goss. Because he talks about how to conquer the fear of failure. That is the key. That's why in many of my talks to people, I will say 90% of human beings get buried underground, not fulfilling their full potential because of the fear of failure. We don't even make the first step. So time and again, we set realistic goals and targets for ourselves because we know we are almost guaranteed to succeed. And by doing that continuously, we're consigning ourselves to walk the path of mediocrity.
And was launching a budget airline, Firefly.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. And there are many, many things that was interesting about that.
It's not a side project.
No, I kind of thought we had turboprop. We had the aircraft, the propeller aircraft. Yeah. We had the jets. We were looking at it, and then why don't we set up a new airline? And then I met this guy. His name is Eddie Leong. Let me return back why I discovered him. He was working in airport ground handling, dealing with the airport. Relative junior guy. He and his colleagues came out with a brilliant idea how to make sure that we collect excess baggage. So they devised a scheme that said if the people that collect the excess baggage from the passengers that carry lots of bags, and if they surpass the target, we then give them the cash. That cash would have given them almost like doubling their pay. Eddie Leong convinced me that this would work. So we then launched the program. I remember distinctly it was launched end of December. On the 1st of January, there was no change in collection. So I asked Eddie, you told me this thing is going to work. How come it's not happening? He said, let me check. So he went back and checked and found out, oh, the reason why it doesn't work, boss, they don't believe it's real. Because they said, how come the management is prepared to pay us double our salary equivalent? It cannot. The joke they had that it was a Nigerian scam. That was the joke. That was everybody said. And so that day, Eddie and his colleague, they went and briefed the staff that this was not a scam. This was real. And so the very next day, which was the 2nd of January, incredible. All hell broke loose at every airport. If you are a lady or you're an old man carrying a huge bag, excess baggage, tidak ada maaf bagimu. They will charge you. And it was incredible. We have havoc at the airport. And so, massive collection. We had a huge amount of money. After we paid all the thing to the staff, I mean, we had our excess baggage more than double, triple for that year. It was incredible. Then I knew that Eddie Leong had something in him. Kind of thought that this guy, if I set up a new airline, who will I put there to become the CEO? Why don't I put this guy? Because he's a bit crazy, but he has the tenacity to push it. He was prepared to look outside the box for it. So I called him to my office and said, Eddie, I'm going to start a new airline. I want you to set that you are the CEO. I want this airline to fly. First flight out in 4 months from today. That was a conversation. He took on the job. In 4 months, we started the airline. The only way we could get it to fly, to get approval sorted out for it to begin was, in that short period of time was, credit goes to Eddie. He came with the idea that, he said, if we set up the base as Penang, Ko Sukun was the chief minister. He will give all the support needed to make it happen. But make it the base. The base must be Penang. That's why when you were registered, the base is Penang, not KL, not KLIA. Because he gave us all the support needed to get it going. And that's how we started. I remember day one, he had an office like this. They just brought from our main office, our sales office, some chairs and tables and put it like that. That's how it was. It was a makeshift office. There was no proper office, but all systems go. And that was because Eddie had the desire. I saw the urgency, the intensity that he put in the package that we were doing on ground handling. That's why I wanted to do that. It's incredible what people can do. He really grew it very, very fast in that period. And of course, he then passed it on and move on to do other things. It's great when you can find people to do different things, like Shell did to me, and I did it to Eddie, and I did to many other people. The current CEO of Firefly, Philip, and he worked with me as well. He started his career in HR as well. He's now the CEO of Firefly. And so he took over two generations after Eddie.
Looking at all these amazing people, could you distill those common values that they all share?
Yeah, I think the common value that these people all share, all of them in their own way pursue the game the impossible. Set targets that are impossible to achieve based on the current way of doing it. And therefore, they find new ways how to do it. Because the current way cannot achieve it. So that's a common thing among all those people. Like Eddie, how do you do it? That's why he came up with this idea. All of them have some form of it. The most successful ones are the ones to put the impossible target truly impossible, and therefore reinventing themselves. And the second aspect is the discipline to execute it, run with it, really run with it, relentlessly run with it. But then don't take no for an answer. Find ways and means. If this method doesn't work, find a different way to get there. And this doesn't work, find a different. The true north remains the same, but the way to get there is relentless. Yeah. Then we call it discipline of action, really needing to do that, and all the other things. But really, that's the key.
How do you make it sustainable, though?
The sustainability comes through, I would call it, institution. You have to institutionalize the new way of working. And so we then introduced in my team, I copyrighted this BFR. You see the shirt here, big fast result behind
with
it.
the dot.
So we have in this big fast result 8 step.
Yeah.
So we teach this new way of working called the 8-step way of working. Once you institutionalize this, then it will stick. When you leave, it will continue. Step 1, every year management team must agree their true north, must agree their priority. In one day, one workshop to agree the true north, to agree the 4 or 5 priorities that contribute to the true north.
Yeah.
And when they do that, they will say, I will change my budget and my resources so that those priorities have the lion's share of the budget. No questions asked. No if, no but.
To do that, you must have first the trust from those people.
Yeah. So to begin with, you must get the leadership to do that. Maybe 5 guys in the management team to agree that. They say, this is what we want to do. This is our priority. After you do that, step 2, get the troops into labs. If you have 4 priorities, 4 labs, running concurrent 6 weeks. And the ideas come from them, not from management. Because if it comes from them, then the ownership is there. The worst thing you can do is you get consultants from outside to come with the idea. That's why when we form a consultancy firm in PEMANDU, we tell the client the idea does not come from PEMANDU. We're bringing a tool to help you discover the answer, co-collaboration. So step 3 in the institutionalizing it is making sure that when the lab finish, we have an open day. We then tell the whole of the organization, this is the recommendations of the lab. This is your path into the adventure to implement it, so everybody know it. And step 4 is making sure we document it in a roadmap, so that everybody have the Bible equivalent or the Quran equivalent in their hands, what the promises that we were going to make. Step 5 is when you then cascade targets and KPI every year to everybody in the whole organization. Because this is clear, we have run the lab, the program is clear, and we have now had document. We now have key performance target throughout the organization. Right from the management, middle managers, junior staff, and staff below, they all have the KPIs, and you can string them all the way to the true north. If you cannot string them, we call them the golden thread. Then you are not aligned. The alignment only comes when there's clear golden thread that runs through the KPIs right from the top to right down to the bottom. That's how you get ownership and commitment for people to do it. Then step 6 is implementation. Do it relentlessly, monitor continuously, and solve problem recursively. Step 7 is when we tell people every year we must validate the results. We get people external to validate whether people cheat or not. Check whether the results are real. Finally, the 8th step is when you do annual appraisal for all the staff, rewarding people for the results delivered, promoting the ones that deserve to be promoted, identifying the areas for shortcoming, what are the changes. Go back to the loop, number 1, annual discussion, management team, to then agree the repriority. Notice that, so I believe that if you have institutionalized this new way of working in the organization, and when it becomes part of the way in which they run the business, then you will find it sticks. Then it becomes sustainable, because you must see the loop as you run through. And if you do this relentlessly and continuously, then I think you will have a flywheel effect and you cannot stop it from spinning.
As I was studying this 8 big step methodology, there was one funny story you said before. I thought it was hilarious. You went to Moscow and the deputy prime minister said, I don't have a traffic light problem, I have a watermelon problem. And it made me think, this sounds very logical when you talk about these 8 steps, but application is very different.
Absolutely.
Right? What are the common issues that arise during application?
One is that in that particular example is people game the system. So what do? They put targets that are very low, in fact lower than last year. But if you don't check it, if you put target lower than last year, they will perform above the target, but it's worse than previous years. So you don't even know that you're bringing that the organization lower and lower in performance because succumb to this game that is being created. So that is why when you realize that's a game that's been played, the low-ball the system, then you have to make sure that there must be a team that we call them the delivery unit that will make sure that people don't game the system. We check the previous targets, that the targets are indeed that they were, and this must really be that. That's why I never allow the organizations in that particular organization to determine their own target for the key priorities that was agreed in the management team. I mentioned step 1, true north, the 4 or 5 priorities. How do I get the targets? Not by them, but by the lab. So we get the labs to come with a target. They receive the target. And because it was recommended, and it was not an esoteric target, it's not a target that's pie in the sky, it's grounded with practical steps.
And you put people in charge as well.
The names of people are there. So it's not something that somebody dreamt it up like that and just stick it on the wall and then, whoa, everybody go and do. No. This is very detailed. So when you start doing that, when we run the lab, they can't game the system. When I was in government, we had 2 sets of activities in government. We call that National Key Results Areas, the NKRA. We have the Ministerial Key Results Areas. The National Key Results Areas were subjected to labs because they were the priorities of the country. For example, we had crime and we had urban public transport. That's why we built the MRT, the Line 1 and Line 2. Now they're building Line 2 and Line 3, the Circle Line. And we knew exactly what we're doing, the new trains that we were bringing in, etc. But we had labs for them. So the Ministry of Transport received the KPIs based on the lab, not the ones that they would have came. Now, the other one, we don't run labs. We just give them clinic that you should set target for yourself. We knew that they game the system. Some of them hit and miss. Some of the ministers, some of the KSUs, they really embraced the idea of the impossible. They set big targets for them. They do all this, but they were not our priorities. And so in life, you have to be ruthless about prioritization. The word ruthless is more important than anything. The word prioritization is one of the most bastardized words in the English dictionary for management because people say prioritize. If you really talk and go through the organization and ask only one question, if this organization say this is my priority, check the budget. If the budget does not reflect in their paying lip service. And there is the problem with 90% of countries in the world. If you look at their 5-year plans, all the things are laid out there, the priorities. But you check the annual budget, they don't mirror it. Then you know it's not real. I've always said to people, management, their job is to agree priorities, to align budgets and allocate resources where it matters. No money, no talk. And that is the key challenge for management, to be ruthless about that. To be ruthless about that, to be cruel, to be kind, meaning to say that if this is a priority, I'm going to rob Peter to pay Paul. Take money from me to pay. That's the most difficult thing to do. Most governments struggle today with unsustainable debts because they're not ruthless about prioritization. We borrow money. 95% of the high-income countries in the world reach high-income status by borrowing so much money, and it become unsustainable.
Yeah.
So Japan is the worst example. Yeah. Government debt is 260% of the GDP. You look at the government debt of the US, France, and UK, totally incredible. Even Singapore, 118%. The debt as percent of their GDP. But it's good if you keep on being able to win the competition, that you can make a lot more surplus out of your exports. But there will come a time, some other country will beat you to it. That was the problem that Japan had in the 80s. They felt that they were infallible. Whatever they produce, whatever cars they produce, the world market will gobble it. But then they didn't realize that Taiwan can come up, South Korea can come up, and other countries can come up with better cars as well, electronic. When you think that other countries are not going to be up to your mark, then I think that's part of your downfall. Then they went out there and overborrow. So over-leveraging is not a good idea in my view. I believe that governments should make sure you should live within your means. Focus on what priorities are. There's enough money if we prioritize. There's never enough money if everything is priority.
And this is not the first time you talk about this.
Yeah.
If I Google your name plus bankruptcy.
Yeah. I always talk about this. I made this message very clear. I lectured twice in Harvard.
Yeah.
And every April, we bring ministers of finance to Boston. And this is one of the key messages that I drum, that we must change the economic model for the world. Over-leveraging is never the path towards prosperity, because it puts the future generation under tremendous strain of unsustainable debt.
I wonder, going back again to that 8-step methodology, you do this now with PEMANDU.
Yeah.
And other countries are doing it as well. They set up delivery units. You seconded 20 of your own people to Tasmania, for instance.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder what lessons you've learned from witnessing all these other delivery units in other countries.
Yeah. There are 3 types of delivery unit as I observed them. One type of delivery unit that I see, the one I don't like, is that when the delivery unit become purely a monitoring department. That means they sit out there, they create a repository to get the KPIs. They are very passive. The KPIs come from various ministries. They put it together, they create a very nice dashboard, and that was it. They basically become a repository. They create a very nice, chunky looking dashboard, looking very, very sophisticated, but nothing fundamentally changing in the way in which they're running it. The outcome is the same because they purely put sophistication and modernity in the old way of working. That delivery unit is a waste. The second delivery unit is they tend to spend so much time doing plans. That means sitting with everybody, working out a beautiful plan, and then they come up with tremendous document that put up a beautiful future for the country, what they should do, but no implementation. That's also a problem. The third type of delivery unit is the one that spend less time with plan, but more time on implementation. That's the one that I subscribe to get results. That is why I always tell people, if you want to do a plan to improve public transport, don't spend 6 months doing it, 6 weeks. That is all that's needed. And so
Check into Hotel California.
check into Hotel California, put the best brains and the best thoughts. And if the answers are not the right one, we amend them along the way. There's a recursive thinking that has to take place. So as you implement it, you make changes along the way as you do it. But don't spend 6 months or whole year thinking of what to do. And I think that's totally counterproductive. So returning to the second approach, I spend 90% of the time planning, 10% doing. Whereas my approach, our type of delivery unit, we advocate 10% time planning, 90% doing. And that's the one, in my view, that will succeed.
What is one thing you wish people would know about PEMANDU and what you're doing?
Well, I wish they will know that our job is to help them transform in order to get big, fast results. And we're not just here to do all sorts of KPIs. No. To help them achieve their big results in a way that's fast. So that's what I want people to know.
Is there anything that people can help you?
Putting your best talents to come and join us, in this revolution. And that's how they will help me, because I think everything you do, in management, in leadership, is about having an idea of what you want to do. You don't actually do it yourself. You get people to do it. And that is the whole idea. Elon Musk never created the car. He didn't create Starlink. He had an idea. But he gathered people to go and do it. And that's really so. Talent is the most important activity in anything that you do in leadership, finding the right people. If you have talents, the right people to do it, it's incredible what people can do.
Speaking of people, I thought we could talk a little bit about your family, because I realized that that's so important just before you wrap up.
Yeah.
And I spoke to your son and your daughter-in-law in preparation, because I wanted to really understand what it was like from a personal perspective. And they said that, they learned so much from you. You and your wife are like soulmates, and they've learned. I wonder, what is that relationship like? Because it's one thing to have an incredible career, but you need a great partner there beside you. And we don't see that often.
Yeah. I think the whole notion about marriage is that at the time when we all get married, we have our marriage vows. to say that we become one. That's the key. And if you can start from the premise that you made your marriage vows that you become one, it means many things. That means when one partner hurts, the other partner must feel the hurt. The other partner feels happy, the other must feel happy. When you make big decisions, it must be done jointly. It all stems from that idea of the oneness in it. Of course, love is a very big, important aspect of it. When I met my wife for the first time, it was love at first sight. But I chased her for the longest time, and she was very frightened of me because I had the big fast result approach at that time. When I was a student, the first time I saw her, I already made my indecent proposal to date her immediately and wanting to go steady. She was, of course, frightened. It was my final year, and she was the first year, So I think that starting point, D.H. Lawrence always say that when you fall in love, you have the spark of fire, the fire of passion. It must be real. And I do believe that when you want to marry someone, I think it's important that at least in the beginning, you must have the fire of passion. But remember, it will die. That fire of passion is not something that will on and on the same way. But because you have to work in it, because we're all two different people who are trying to become one, you will quarrel. In marriage, there's no such thing as all straight line. You have the ups and downs. There are differences. There are differences of opinion. To being able to adapt and accommodate is the most important aspect of it. And so when you go through conflicts, you have to find a way how to do it. It's important to have a sense of humor and finding common interests as well. My wife and I, we have some common interests. We like watch movies, not exactly the same type of movies, but we both like movies. We like music as well. And I'm a terrible tennis player. She's plays slightly better than me, I suppose, but I pick up tennis in order to play with her. So we do a lot of things in common. The common thing that we do for our sons, we try to make sure that a day does not pass by us saying to our kids, we love you. If you say that word 100 times, it's wonderful. And I think there are so many families, the utterance of that word does not come. So the word we love you is a huge foundation in the way we raise our kids. We always believe in raising our kids almost like free-range chicken. We don't discipline them as much as many parents do. We don't do that. We don't put them on the can. But the way in which you brought our kids is the upbringing through love. There are pros and cons in doing it. Sometimes maybe we wish we had been a bit more disciplinarian, like my dad had done to me, throw Leon into the pigsty. Didn't do it for Leon and Max. Sometimes I think maybe I should have done it, but Nan and I don't do it quite like that. And I see the way Leon and Andrea raise their kids. They're very different from ours. But, that's the style of doing it. So Nan and I, the foundation of the family, the word love is a word that is uttered so many times. I think in a day, I lose count how many times I say the word. We have granddaughter now, Ayla. We have a grandson, Jet. And those words, still the same words we utter to them every day. And in a day, there's so many times you say that word. I think you put a foundation that in the family that's grounded on love. There are a lot of positive things that come out from it, rather than fear and discipline. And so I think that's why God says in the Bible, greatest of these commandments is love. And that's why I think he said all the other commandments are secondary to the notion of thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart and all your strength and all your might. He wants us to love our enemies too. And when that happens, I think it transcends everything.
What is the SOW Club?
Very long story. When I was in PEMANDU, they created a club, not known to me in the beginning. What's this club you guys created and you didn't tell me? Oh, we call it SOW Club. It's called Scared of Wife Club. The theory is that successful people have chosen wives that are opinionated. So if you choose a too docile a wife, chances are you're not going to forge a path that will reach uncharted waters. So they got one guy, they made him the lifetime president of the club. So I asked them, why did you choose him to be the lifetime president? Oh, boss, you should see the wife during the family day, then you know why. When I saw the wife, I concluded absolutely right. She was very garang, I must say. As it turned out, eventually, for some reason, the story went past, and someone else was appointed as the next president. It's the same thing, the lifetime president. But I think, for me, I'm not scared of my wife per se, but my wife has got opinion. We would argue on certain points, but she feels strongly about it. She put her views on the table there. And we will have a really robust argument about whether we think what's right and wrong. And that argument is there. We will learn to respect one's opinions.
Is she always right?
She's right sometimes. I'm right sometimes. But normally when we quarrel, I will make sure that she's right most of the time. So that's part of the concession you make when you get married. But, life is about give and take. If you can find a way in a family, you raise a family of foundation of love and the respect for the two, that you always know that the starting point for a relationship, there was a fire of passion, that you have to work to make it happen. But, you work towards reaching your common true north. I have now turned 65. So Ngan and I have said we should find a way in which we consider our life. First half in football, then we go into the second half. I suppose now is a time that I'm moving into my second half. So we are both now in a period of searching for what is this thing that she and I would do together as part of our common life together, something that we both want to do in the second half that may even be better than the first half. And we haven't found it yet. We're praying about it, and we're doing Bible in 1 year, try to do it on a daily basis. And we're praying about this very notion, as we repeatedly done it in the time I went to Mass. But this time we are specific. We're looking for what is that thing that Ngan and I will do together, that we both are going to journey together in doing it. We are seeking guidance from God and through prayer, but we haven't found it yet.
Yeah, incredible. Idris, it's been such a pleasure to have had you. Before I ask my final questions, I have 2 questions from different people.
Right.
So I'll play this first video for you.
Oh, wow.
Hi, I'm Brenner, founder, CEO, and cybersecurity strategist for Aiden Secure. My question to Dato Sri Idris Jala will be reflecting on your past achievements. It appears to have been a journey marked by continuous ascension in your career. Were you originally driven by the ambition to reach your current position, or did you cultivate different ambition at various stages of your life? So that's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Very interesting question, Brendan. I have to say that, I told you the story. I wanted to be a lawyer. I never became one. And then I wanted to be an academician. I never became one. So setting the target about my final ambition had never worked for me. What had worked for me was doing the best I can in my current job. And that was all there was to it. So I never thought, the next job I want to do at Malaysia Airlines. I never thought about the next job I want to get. I never worked. So every job that I had, I wanted to see the best version of myself in that particular job. I never bothered about the next job.
Katui.
Yeah, that was it. Katui.
Final question.
I am Leon. I'm the son of Idris Jala that he interviewed right now. And then my question to you is, first of all, for your sons, Max and I, what do you hope that we might emulate of you? And as a follow-up to that, then what do you hope that we might do different?
Oh, interesting. What I wanted the two of you to do, Leon, is that I really want you to find your game of impossible. It doesn't matter what it is. I really want you to set out for yourself the game of the impossible that you yourself say you cannot and never achieve based in your current way of doing it, and therefore you have to reinvent yourself. And that, I think, is the most important. One I think you should do differently is that if you want to find out something different, you have to go out there and find how to go and get this thing beyond the conventional measure of success. Mine is a very conventional measure of success. Running a company, look at the P&L, maybe find a different measure of success that have an impact. That's not a conventional way. Greater purpose, whatever the purpose is, you are doing junior pastor in the church. Think about it very differently, very different. I'll just give you an example. I spent an hour and a half with the Hope Ministry, and they started quite a number of churches, and a few of them are really setting up a huge target for themselves. I was amazed. They reached out to me and they said, look, what we're really trying to do now is to move from 60 different locations in the world to expand to become 3,000 locations. That's a massive challenge. Their measure of success was to draw as many people to be disciples of Christ. But their definition of success was very different from my conventional definition of success. I suppose much more directly related to the kingdom work. So do the thing that really come close to your heart, Leon and Max, and I think that will make a huge difference. Think about impact on people.
Amazing. Do you feel like, having gone through this entire journey with you, you have found your why?
Yeah, I think so. This is the reason I said I brought this shirt. My why is this, and I find myself over time now, the greatest calling is to help leaders and people in organization to achieve their game of the impossible, big, fast result. So to me, why big? I think nobody wants more stuff. And who wants to go there and say, well, I want to get durian, but I only want one durian. People want durian runtola. That's why the word durian runto comes in. But nobody wants these days, people instant gratification. People don't want the things to come so slowly. They want it now. They want it now. So when we were doing the work, my team and I were doing work for Tanzania. The president of Tanzania is a fine gentleman by the name of President Kikwete, Jakaya Kikwete. He said, Idris, I really like this idea of big, fast result. I'm going to name my initiative in the whole of Tanzania BRN. So what's BRN? Big results now. Not fast, but I want it now. This idea now is very important. So we did the same idea of work in Oman. They were so interested in big results, but they were very interested in the now as well. So the whole of Oman, the whole country, coined a term to describe the initiative is tanfid. Tanfid in Arabic means acceleration, speed of execution. So the president in South Africa, the same thing. We helped them to develop the work there. We ran the labs, and they call it Project Pakisa. Pakisa is speed of execution. So you realize that in this day and age, people are not just only interested in big results. They're also interested in speed, Pakisa. And they also want tanfid, big results now. So my why is helping leaders and people in their organization to achieve big, fast results.
Isn't Sir Michael Barber also doing this?
Michael Barber does not do big, fast results. He helps them to deliver results, but he does not push them to deliver fast results. But I'm very obsessed with that idea of big, fast results, and I really, really want to push it because I realize that that's my why.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, the legacy is that people would say that when Idris was here, we kind of felt that he helped us transform to achieve big, fast results. If people remember me for that, that's good in my opinion.
Yeah. And what do you think are the most important qualities of a successful person?
For me, I'm biased. The most important is they must do the idea of game impossible.
Yeah.
Set targets that are impossible to achieve, forcing them and the organization to transform and discover a new way to do it. The second aspect is to become very, very clear about your definition of true north. And therefore, you become then ruthless about prioritization so that you can focus your energy and resources. Third one is that you have to have discipline of action, not just thinking about, not planning, but doing it. Fourth one is making sure that you adjust your style based on the situation. That means at the beginning of the journey, not too much democratic discussion, but directive in style, much more towards the latter part when the journey more empowering. And the idea of winning coalition, but bringing people along with you on the journey, exciting them, making people really feel that this is a journey worth taking. Because if you are a leader, if you can lead and you're running all you want, no one's following you, that's a futile journey. And lastly is the idea of divine intervention. Divine intervention, knowing the world is not at our feet. Despite how confident you can look and sound, you have to realize that the world is not at your feet. And therefore, you must be prepared to say, if I fail, it's okay. Only thing I ask of myself and my team is that we do our best. And if our best does not meet standard, not achieve the result, it's okay. Don't shoot each other. So this idea of being vulnerable, accepting that the world is not at your feet, set the humility rather than the pride into the psyche. And if the humility sets inside there, then I think it becomes normal as well. So you don't go charging out there thinking that, you are God's greatest gift to mankind. You can fail. In reality, there's so many things in this world outside our control. The whole world succumbed during COVID-19. Whether you're president or whether you're prime minister of a country, the virus doesn't see any borders. Oil price changes. Even the currency exchanges. There's so many things outside the scope of what you can control. Because of that, the only way you can then do is to pray if you are the religious type of person. I think in the Christian context, and I always believe that, if we call ourselves truly as Christians, the greatest gift other than salvation that we have is the promise that Jesus said that He will send the Holy Spirit to live within us. Holy Spirit in our context is God. If the Holy Spirit lives within us, and if you can allow God to work through us, who are we then, as Mandela said, to discount our possibilities and feel and look small? Therefore, the power is limitless if we then rely on God who lives within us through the power of the Holy Spirit. By surrendering and allowing that to happen, then I think sky's the limit.
And what's the best way to know what you're up to and support your work?
Well, I have some things on YouTube, and you can check in the things that we do on our website.
Yeah, PEMANDU.
We have a website, PEMANDU Associates. That journey is a very interesting journey. We're a small boutique outfit. We're not big. Our idea is not becoming big as a firm. We're small because I think small is beautiful.
Yeah. And anything else you'd like to share before we end this?
Well, no, I've been just marvelous talking to you, knowing that you're Sarawakian as well.
Yes, Sarawakian, Kuching Ai,
Yes.
Christian.
Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
And that was the end of episode 148, part 2 with Dato Sri Idris Jala. The show notes can be found at sothismywhy.com/148. And just a reminder that if you'd like to learn more about how to build your personal brand online, just check out the Build Your Why course at link-y-wong.mykajabi.com/join us. The link is also in the podcast description below. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Just look for So This My Why, scroll to the very bottom, search for Write a Review, select how many stars you like, and just write the review. If you are watching this in its glorious 4K video version on YouTube, it would be great if you left a comment below letting us know what you thought of this episode. It really helps us to understand what you like, what other episodes we can create to impact other people as well. And finally, do check out this particular episode where it also has links to some of the things that we've discussed in this episode. So thanks for sticking around. Do hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and see you next Sunday.